Topping Talks.
Let's see it.
105 hours a week can't be beat. Welcome to Topping Talks. Topping Talks is a Topping Tribune production, and today's episode is proudly sponsored by Topping Technologies. Topping Technologies is an IT value-added reseller and services company with a special proficiency in IT security. Heck, I see their founder at least twice a day. Gotta say he's quite handsome and brilliant. He's me, you see, that's the joke. If you're an IT leader or a business owner, you can reach out to the team at sales@toppingtechnologies.com. Also, we're still giving away a free Flamethrower with every IT purchase. Go to toppingtechnologies.com and click the Flamethrower button to learn more, or look at the video description. Also, and lastly, trying to get to 2,000 subscribers by the end of the year. So if you can click that button and tell your friends, I would greatly appreciate it. Now, without further ado, today I'm proud to say I'm interviewing a professional with decades of career long that spanned everything from healthcare, logistics, technology, entertainment, to education, to even IT recruiting and everything in between. Introducing Nelson Frederick, who is the Director of Technology at W&B Services Company based in Dallas, Texas. Thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me. Pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. So winding back the clock a couple years, how did you first get into IT?
From an education standpoint, that was in college. I went to college thinking that I wanted to go into law. Once I got there, I found out it wasn't as interesting as I thought it would be.
It's not like Suits, the movie or the
Not
TV
at
show?
all. Not at all. And then I also had an interest in film and television, and I liked commercials, funny commercials, things that kind of moved you. So I decided to take the track of advertising. But then I found out that at UT, advertising was a weed out class or course.
Oh, really?
And so I didn't want to go down that path. I was already in the business school, so I decided to take a look at marketing. Marketing wasn't as creative as I'd liked. And so at that point, I figured, hey, what can make money? What's bulletproof in this economy back then? And so at that point, I thought, let me take a look at IT. I've always been pretty handy when it came to computers and technology. And so I took a look at that, and I figured that was going to be the path. So I started looking and going down the path of management information systems.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah.
Do you remember the first computer you were using by chance?
Oh, my gosh.
Or first one that really stuck out to you?
Back then, I mean, it was the first that stuck out was actually an Apple computer. And that was because none of us had Apple computers until we still didn't have them, but we had access to them at the computer labs up at UT. So that was my first time, touching an Apple computer. So it was pretty high tech back then.
I was going to say they're good marketing and placement, because the first time I ever touched an Apple was at the public school I was at.
Yeah, they did a good job with that.
Then what was your first role in technology, and what was it like getting that first role?
So while I was in college, I realized that the curriculum that we had was always a year max, or about a year and a half behind what was current. And so, as you know, in technology, that's a lifetime.
True.
And so I realized, I was studying things, DOS and Windows 3X, and there was this thing called Windows 95 that was already out there. And so I made sure that during my first summer, I was going to get some sort of technical job, some sort of IT job. And so I got a gig working for the Texas Education Agency. There was a gentleman that had a company that got a contract to build PCs, to upgrade PCs from Windows 3 something to Windows 95. And so it was a contract for about 800 machines.
Oh, wow.
And he hired me, and I became the hands. And so it was at that point that I learned how to build PCs, and I learned how to upgrade OSs. I learned how to use this cutting-edge tool called Ghost to ghost hard drives, whether it was from a physical media or ghosting from a network. And so I spent, all that time learning, and it demystified what it was to, build a PC. In my mind, it was, I'd have a soldering gun and chips and whatnot, but really it was just, several major components that you would piece together, and that would result in your machine. And so that was my first gig in IT.
That's awesome. What was it like building those PCs? Because, nowadays, when people think build a PC, most people can go to Micro Center, you pick all the components, and most of them just kind of stick in place, and you throw a little paste on there. But You were actually doing soldering?
No. See, I thought I was going to be doing soldering. So the way that you just described it was exactly what it was. So you'd have a motherboard, and you'd have RAM and a hard drive and a case and some other peripherals, and you would, put them together. And they needed to work together. So, for example, you needed to understand how memory worked and how it worked in parity and things of that nature. And so it was a great learning experience.
Do you remember the speeds and feeds from like the first one you made back then? Or?
Oh my gosh!
No, that's a couple years back.
I think back then it was 4 gigs of RAM. That was max. I can't remember what type of CPU it was, but I know back then it seemed fast, but today I don't think I could wait 2 minutes for a computer to boot up.
Oh my gosh, just 2 minutes back
2
then?
2 minutes. Mm-hmm.
And now we think, nowadays a PC, if it takes 20 seconds, you already call tech support, be like, hey, it's broken.
Something's wrong. Exactly.
Oh my gosh. And what was it like? Did you buy the components from like a Radio Shack back then? And like, did you assemble in a warehouse? And did you ship them in boxes? Like, what was the whole process like? That's pretty unique.
We got the so the owner actually, he ordered the components, and so they would show up, and I'd have a space there in the building. It was kind of like a server room type of a space with a bunch of desks, and so I would just lay out all the different pieces of hardware, and he showed me how to put things together, maybe 5 times. And then the next day I just came in by myself and just started assembling. So it was literally from, 8 in the morning until 5 in the afternoon. And I would just bang out computer after computer after computer. So that part was cool.
Yeah.
But I really enjoy the part where we were, I was imaging devices and installing the OS, just because I would see different error messages and different things that would happen. And so that gave me a good grasp of how to install the OS and how to deal with the issues that might pop up.
That's so cool and unique to think of a time in history when it comes to technology. Because like nowadays, most public schools and public entities, they'll bid it out. But I mean, it's overwhelmingly pre-built from Hewlett Packard, Dell, or Lenovo. But back then, you're actually making them yourselves. That's so cool.
Yeah, it was fun.
And then, do you remember like what was the most common issues that would come up, and how did you troubleshoot back then? Because I know it's kind of funny to joke about it, but it's kind of true. Most of the time, modern, a lot of things in life can be solved just by Googling it.
Right.
Including IT things. But back then,
Google wasn't available. No. So I guess most of the problems that I would have would be with imaging, right? So if it was a piece of media, so back then it was like a floppy drive.
Right.
You boot up to the floppy drive, and so you'd have to make sure that you got the commands correct. Because it wasn't a mouse and you're clicking on things. The interface was a keyboard interface. And so you'd have to type your commands and make sure your commands made sense and make sure that you did everything in order. And there was also ghosting from the network, which that was interesting because you had to make sure that you understood the bandwidth requirements and the limitations, and you'd need to be able to understand what was happening with, I guess, the visual that was showing like how far the imaging had gone to or completed, and so if it got stuck to let's say 25%, had been 15, 20 minutes or 30 minutes, whatever whatever time it was that you knew that something was wrong, you needed to recognize that and then go through your steps of restarting the whole process. So it was interesting.
That's pretty cool. Then, out of curiosity, do you have like kind of like a dictionary with all the command prompts in them, or some type of like a major manual with all the most common command prompts, or do you just know this by heart by that?
Back then, I knew it by heart.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but I didn't go in there knowing it by heart. I went in there, and my boss wrote down a few commands, gave me a notebook, and I read through that, and then I just did a little bit of research on my own, and so I knew, okay, here are the 7-8 commands that I'm going to need, and where they fit in this process, and you do that 800 times, it kind of sticks.
Oh yeah. And it's funny nowadays if people see you doing command line, a family member would be like, "Are you hacking something?" It's like, no, that's how you do things.
Old school.
Precisely. And then did you have to deal with the troubleshooting when folks were using the computers in the field and things would pop up?
No, I really was able to finish the project. They rolled those devices out, and they had their own, whether it was internal, external, they had their own resources for that.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And then what was your next role in IT?
So that was my first summer. And then went back in school, and that was going okay. I was first person to go to college in my family, so
Oh, nice.
I didn't really have direction from my folks on how things should be. So I was kind of winging it basically. But so I was learning how to study and things like that. So it wasn't easy. It wasn't as easy as high school, but I was getting along. And then my father passed away suddenly. And so once that happened, I sort of took a look at everything that I was doing, took a look at life in general, and I decided, hey, I'm not 100% into college right now. I'm not giving it 100%, and I really want to jump into my career. So what's the best thing to do at this point? So I left UT early, and I moved back to Dallas, and I started working for a company called Tandy. So Tandy owns Radio Shack.
Yeah.
And so I worked for Radio Shack, for Tandy Radio Shack, as tech support. And so the stores would call in, and I would take those calls and troubleshoot things with their computers and their point of sale systems over the phone.
That's incredible. That's one of the most iconic Texas companies for people don't realize that like Tandy used to own darn near everything. I know they invested in the Container Store, but like most iconic one was Radio Shack.
Yeah.
Back in the day, they had Tandy computers too,
Yep.
which is hilarious. There's a time in the 70s where all these leather companies started to go, let's make computers. Like Coleco was the same thing. They're a leather and toy company. Go, let's make computers and video games now.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah. And then, do you work at the Tandy headquarters, the iconic one, or
I was at Tandy headquarters in downtown Fort Worth.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, it was a fun time. I was out of school, so I was younger, early 20s, and had a great apartment. I was considered a professional. My best friend we lived together, and he was in IT as well. So at the time, we were making good money, young, just having fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And do you have a favorite computer from back then that you really liked, or one that really stuck out to you most? Because they made some really cool things. I remember the old chiclet keyboards are iconic for a lot of folks. Love those.
Honestly, I was more interested in their other stuff. So
Really?
their remote control cars and their tools. Tandy Radio Shack had a great set of tools to just tinker. It was, if you liked taking things apart and putting them together, Radio Shack was great for you.
Oh, it was one of the best. People don't realize how cool it was, especially for hobbyists back in the
Yeah.
day. If you needed the most obscure, random part, they would have it.
Yep.
Like they would have all the semiconductors you could possibly need, all the soldering kits you would need. Like the variety was unparalleled.
It was great. It was fun.
Oh, that's one of my favorite stores that I miss. If I could bring back like a store from the dead, like I wish you could bring back Radio Shack. It's like for all the fun things they used to have there, it's just so great.
Yeah, you learn a lot. Great for tinkers. Yep.
Oh, absolutely. They had darn near everything. But again, kind of the cliche story of, businesses not adapting. And then, of course, the internet, that's the ultimate, warehouse of technology parts. But there is something to be said about having something just right there down the street.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, less and less people did hobbies that needed those components. But yeah, for a long time, Radio Shack was the OG place to go shop.
Yeah, you gotta change with the times. I mean, it was great for that moment that they were at the forefront of everything, but you got to pay attention, and otherwise you turn out to be like Blockbuster or Circuit City.
I miss Circuit City too. Yeah, that one. Or soon to be Best Buy. Kidding, maybe. It's like. Yeah, a lot of those stores, Circuit City used to be one of my favorite electronic places, and Toys R Us was obviously iconic, and Blockbuster too. It's like, and Blockbuster, they tried to adapt, but yeah, do you ever hear the story of like how they chose their partner for internet streaming?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, we're going to partner with this company. What company is that, Bob? We're going to trust Enron. Well, that didn't turn out. That didn't work out great.
And they're both gone now.
Yeah, exactly. Rest in peace. And then where'd you go after Radio Shack?
So actually, after Radio Shack, at that point, I was still doing some self-discovery, and so I had done some modeling and acting in Dallas and down in Austin as well. So as a part of that, I was taking commercial classes, and as I said before, I've always had a thing for entertainment, and I consider myself a movie buff, a TV buff, and so. At that point, I was like, the only time that I'm truly, truly happy is once a week when I'm coming home or going to that one commercial workshop, being on camera, saying these things that are make-believe, and that's what I want to do. Yeah. So at that point, I told my best friend that, hey, I'm out of here. He kind of lost his stuff. He was like, "What are you talking about? We're single bachelors. Everything is amazing." And I said, "No, I get that, but I need to do what makes me happy." And so I auditioned for an acting school out there in Southern California, quit my job, and called a frat brother out there and stayed on his couch for a year while I went through the steps of getting, everything that you need to get as a working actor.
What's that like, getting all those things?
It was good for me because I tend to have a logical mindset, and so whereas some people got out there and they're like, "Oh, I need to maybe do this and maybe do that," and I sort of, people talk about vision boards, so to speak.
Oh, yeah.
It's kind of like that. I had okay, I'm going to get my SAG card. I'm going to get an agent. I'm going to get my first TV show, whatever that is,
And then
a bit part.
For the folks not in the industry, what's a SAG card? For folks who might not know.
Screen Actors Guild card. So it basically just states that you're in the union, and to get it, you have to actually get on something that's been shot and have a line. And so, but most of the time, people don't get lines unless they're SAG. So it's sort of a catch-22. And so what I did, and my mindset was, okay, everything that I do has to be for these things. So literally I would do it, I would check every morning. Okay, what am I doing this morning? Okay, I'm having this particular meal. Okay, is that good for me? Is that going to be good for my energy, for my complexion, in case I'm on TV? Yes, that's what I want to do. There's a gym membership that I have. Should I go? Yes, I should. I need to stay in shape. Should I go to that party? Maybe I shouldn't. And so abiding by that North Star of this is what I want to accomplish, and everything that I do has to lead to that, allowed me to get all those things, my first year, and then start, booking things and living the life of an actor for a couple of years.
That's awesome. And then with a SAG card, do you have to have that in order to, is this a Hollywood thing, or is this all media production like in the US, or what is it like in that
It's
regard?
a Hollywood thing, yeah. So it's a guild. So it's a membership guild. So actors have a guild or a membership, directors have a guild, and once you're a member of those entities, then you get perks like insurance. You get the ability to actually get booked in certain roles, and if you're a director, you get certain perks that are specific to directing films.
Really? And do you have to be a part of it in order to get is it like an unspoken rule in Hollywood? Like you have to be a part of that in order to get those roles?
So, for example, it's a union. Right. So if somebody is shooting a television series, there's agreements that say, okay, for all your main roles, these people have to be in the union. Now you can have extras, so people that are kind of filler background. Now those people, because they don't have speaking roles, you're allowed to have those as non-union. And they do that because as a union member, there's a minimum amount of pay that you get. So you can't get below a certain amount. So that's one of the perks that you get in being in a union.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Do you remember that first line you got?
Oh yeah, it was.
What was it?
It was. So I'm African. So I was born in East Africa.
Cool.
I'm Ugandan. And so there was a show a while back. I'm not sure if you recall, but Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Yeah.
With Sarah Michelle Gellar a
was
long time
iconic.
ago. Yeah. And so there was a role that I got the sides for. So the script, a manager got me and said, "Hey, here's this episodic, and they're looking for an African guy." I was like, "Well, what kind?" "Oh, an African soldier, and he's going to be guarding something, and has a few lines with one of the main characters." And so I was like, "All right, let me take a swing at this." Now, I don't speak my language. I understand some of it, but in my mind, they don't know that.
Yeah.
And so I called my mom and said, "Mom, hey, here are these lines. How do you say it in Luganda, which is the language?" So she said it to me. I repeated it several times. And I'll tell you what, I went in there like I had a cape on. I was uber confident. I knew how to say the lines in my language. It may not have been perfect, but I knew that they didn't know what it was, but it felt real to me. And so, went through the audition. I felt like I killed during the audition, and I just said thank you and walked out immediately. Most people will kind of stick around and look for a pat on the back or something of that sort, but I felt like, no, I did what I needed to do. So I walked out. Within 15 minutes, they called and said, "Hey, that was great. Can you come back for a fitting?" sure. So so I got that role, and we shot out in the desert, and it was amazing. It was like my dreams finally came true. I'm on TV.
What episode is that? I need to look this up.
I don't know the episode. I tend not to even tell people, because every time I do, people start trying to look it up, and it's not my best work. But it was a scene with Spike. I was the guy that had the spiky blonde hair. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And then what you said, what does it mean to come in for a fitting? Does that mean you officially got the role, or is that literally to get fitting for an outfit? Or?
Yeah, exactly. So you come in, and whatever you're supposed to wear as that character, they measure you and make sure that everything fits. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And then at that point, did you already have an agent, and how did you come across that opportunity?
I had an agent at that point. Getting an agent was a matter of literally cold calling, walking into offices, dropping things off, and I did that for a couple of months until I got an agent.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So I always wondered how, kind of the chicken before the egg, like how do you get that first agent? Then do you technically need an agent to get a role? Or is it I know it's the norm, but is that just the commonality, or is it like a rule officially? Or
it's really all about connections, right? So people that are in Hollywood, depending on where you are, and for example, if it's your first year being an agent or whatever it is, you don't know a lot of people. But if you've been there for quite a bit, eventually, if you're a good person, you keep your contacts, scratch people's backs, whatnot. Eventually, you'll have a wide network of people, resources that you can lean on. So if you are an agent of that caliber and you have somebody that you take on, then you can lean on those resources or those connections to connect your actor with roles that maybe people that had kind of grown up in the industry alongside with you and are in positions to actually, give you roles or give your actor an opportunity to audition that, if you were just somebody off the street, you wouldn't get.
That's really cool. And then in terms of order of operations, in terms of like, okay, a new movie's coming out, they're looking for prospective actors and actresses to go in there. Do the agents, is their job to constantly kind of look at those new scripts and news opportunities and then connect it with their clientele, or is there any instances where actors are looking at the specific scripts, or who has access to that type of data feeds, and how does that work?
Oh, it's
on average.
It's complex. So it all depends on the type of production, and there are many kinds of productions. At the bottom end, they're independent, maybe film school stuff or college stuff. Things that somebody just gets a camera, gets a few people as far as lighting and sound or whatnot, and they just want to do something, right? And so obviously for something like that, you just need people. But you're a kid, you don't know any, actors that you can pay a lot of money or any money. And so that's the quality of actors you're going to get, maybe people that are just starting off. And then on the very far end of the spectrum, opposite end of the spectrum, you take these big blockbuster scripts that come out, and it's all a money machine, right? So it's all about maximizing the return. So maybe it starts with a script with a well-known writer that people really like. They wrote something that's just great, and so now you have something that has value. And now you need to attach other things that have value. So you want an actor that people want to go watch, so somebody would probably want to watch Denzel before they watch Nelson, right? Because he's a big actor. We know his work. And so you want to try to attach those people to that project. Now, do they still need to read for it? It depends. Sometimes you have maybe several people that are the same caliber and you want to pick the right one, so maybe they'll read, or maybe you just know this movie is for that person, and so you give them the script, and if they say yes, it's a done deal. Same thing with directors. The better caliber director, the more likely it's going to be a hit. The better caliber other surrounding actors or supporting actors, the more likely the film's going to do well, the more likely it's going to get financed by the studios. And if everything works well, then it gets out in the theaters, everybody watches it, and everybody makes a lot of money.
I was going to say, that's a lot of variables, a lot of moving parts. Is the very first inception of like a movie or a new TV series just the writers putting it all together?
Sometimes it's the writers. A lot of times it's the producers. So producers are the ones, you can imagine someone balancing a bunch of spinning plates.
Yeah.
Producers are usually the ones that connect the directors, find the casting agents to get the right actors or whatever it is. So the producer tends to be sort of the man in the middle or woman in the middle, kind of guiding everything, the puppet master, so to speak.
Oh, yeah, the quarterback of the team.
Exactly.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
And what was your favorite work that you ever did throughout that career area of your life?
I actually did a student film that was based on the sit-ins back in the civil rights movement. And so it was myself and a couple of actresses that played these young kids, these young black kids that went to one of these counters in the South, and the interaction that we had with some people from the South that didn't want us to be there. And it was very, it was shot in this gritty black and white.
I like that.
I haven't had hair for a long time, since I was probably 19, 20 years old, and I needed to have hair. So
really?
we had the makeup people give me a head of hair every day.
There you go.
So it was great, and the actors that played opposite us, who played the people that didn't want us to be there, they were younger kids as well, and we gave them permission to just go with it, and it was a lot of emotion.
I can imagine.
But it was a great project. I was very proud of that.
Then, out of curiosity, what was it like getting into hair and makeup every day? Was it difficult, then just became routine, or
Itchy.
what was that process like?
It was itchy. It was about an hour.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and it was literally they use a type of a glue, and just these pads that look like little afros, and so they just put them on, spot by spot for about an hour.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, I guess you have to have a good audiobook or a movie or something. You guys just sitting there. You have to be like perfectly still too.
Yeah.
Ooh, that's gonna be a rough one.
Yeah, it was okay though. It was worth the effort.
And I was gonna say, what's your favorite experience about Hollywood and the whole? What was your favorite part?
So that one, I liked what that project was about, but I also did a project with a VFX guy who had a sci-fi vision for a guy who has a girlfriend, and something happens where she gets killed, and he hears about someone who has a contraption, a time machine, to try to go back in time and save his girl. And so for that one, he built this huge tank that would fill up with water. And so every time we shot it, I would get in there, and water would fill up as I was in the tank. I'd have to hold my breath, and
really?
And in post it was all these visual effects and everything, where I'll travel through time to go try to save my girlfriend. So that was a lot of fun. And this guy was he's a pretty good director right now, but at the time he was the main VFX guy on The Matrix.
Oh, really?
So yeah, so he's very talented, and has done The Matrix and a bunch of, I can't remember all off the top of my head, but a bunch of VFX heavy movies. So he was really good.
Do you ever get claustrophobic or worried? Because how much of the tank did they fill with water? Was it all the way to the top? Or what was that
it
like?
was always above my head.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah.
So you're holding your breath for how long?
It was
pretty long.
About 20 seconons max.
Okay.
But it was fun. And again, it was worth it. That particular short film got bought by HBO.
Oh, nice.
Won some award, and so they premiered it down in Miami. So I got to fly from Cali to Miami and watch the premiere in a movie theater. And so that was one of those moments where I was like, I made it, even though it was just a short film. But it was great.
That's awesome. What inspired you to move on to a different industry or leave Hollywood?
Oh, so I needed to grow up.
Really?
I did that for a while, and it was great. I wasn't at the level that I wanted to be in terms of financially. And so I didn't want to struggle anymore. Yeah. And I decided I couldn't have one foot in, one foot out, and I'm just not built that way. So I decided, let me go full bore into IT. And so at that point, I'd always had sort of a part-time job in IT. And so I just went full force, and I was working on a help desk, and then once I really focused on that, I just started kind of progressing through the different positions after that role, all the way until I'm where I'm at today.
That's awesome. What was that first help desk role like, or where was it at?
So it was in LA. And it was for a healthcare company. It was nursing homes. And so there was one guy who was sort of the manager. He was a top role in the company, and he needed some help. And so I was the first hire. And I remember coming in, and at the time he had a pager. And so his pager would go off every 10 seconds. and because he was the IT guy for a bunch of different locations. And so I was like, how is this guy functioning? You know, and he brought me in, and I was like, okay, I can take some of these calls, but this needs to be organized. Like, people can't just call the person who's leading the department and he handles everything. How can he do the rest of his work? So these were the initial ideas in my head as far as having a help desk before even really having been on a help desk. And so I created a line that people could call that wasn't, you know, my phone number, his phone number, something that I can man, and something that when we hired more people, the additional people can man that line. And so that helped to triage some of the calls. And then I found a ticketing system, and then, you know, we were kind of off to the races.
I've worked with a couple of those clients before. It's one of the most complex, difficult, and rewarding instances because there's a lot of questions never end.
Correct.
And again, being those nursing homes, there's a lot of vital equipment, a lot of vital data got to keep track of. The pharmaceutical machines, literally, I know some of them are automated nowadays, but got to keep track of all that data, be compliant. It's a fun opportunity, fun challenge there.
And it's working in a backdrop that tends to be very blue collar, which is interesting. It's very blue collar, but you got to have your things in order in terms of data security and the tools that are the life-saving tools. They have to function. So
literally.
But then you have people that say, I don't like technology. I don't know computers. You know, I can't do this. And so it's a yin and a yang.
Exactly. And do you remember the most hilarious or most unusual phone call you ever got in that instance you were working there? Or?
So later on, it was the same company, but it had grown. So at this point, I was managing. I had a help desk team, and I was the manager over that team. But I would get some of the after hours calls, and this particular one, it was up in Northern California, and they said, "Hey, we're having." All the electricity's out. Not sure how we're going to fix this, but somebody drove off the road and slammed into the building. I was like,
what?
What do you mean? The car ran off the road and ran through the building.
What?
So I had to get on the plane and go out there and figure out how we were going to recover.
Oh my gosh, how did you recover? That's a unique circumstance. I never heard one.
Well, we got the car out of the building first.
There you go.
And then it was just a matter of, okay, how are we going to rewire things, you know, just at the base level, right? Because the wiring is what everything is tiered off of. And then after that, it was like, okay, what do we need to replace as far as access points or anything else that was damaged? But it looked worse than what it was.
And then what was it like going from help desk to help desk manager in that first big, cause again, I know there's a lot of folks who are tuning in the show who like career advice and development. And then one of the most difficult things is going from when your role is mainly, you know, touching the keyboard to start, you know, leading a team. What was it like? How did you get that promotion? Then what was it like? How did you handle it?
So I would say, and let me take a step back. Let me talk about, you know, just getting in the door, right? And I can speak about this just because of my journey, and as well as I had a recruiting company for a bit. My wife and I did, and we recruited for IT. Plus, I've also hired people within all of my roles. So as far as getting into IT, I'd say be open to whatever you can get. If you have someone who can put you on in some capacity, take it. If there is, you know, something like a, you know, first level desktop support or a help desk position, take it. Even if that's not where you want to be, get in the door, because if you have the aptitude to learn things and you have a drive to get to a certain point, it'll be seen. You know, whatever that position is, maybe you won't be in it for more than a year. You know, maybe they'll see your drive and then put you in whatever next role. Or if you've gotten all the experience that you can get, you know, other people outside may see that, and so you can interview for other positions. But that would be the advice I would say: just get in, be open, and then once you're in, you know, voice to people what you want to do, because you know there's that saying: does when a tree falls in the forest, if no one's there, does it really fall? Can you hear it, or something like that?
I understand. Yeah.
So it's the same thing. So if you don't tell anybody that, hey, you know, I'm a help desk person right now, but I really wanted to be a database administrator or a data analyst or whatever it is, nobody's going to know. And you can't expect somebody to come and say, hey, you know, Nick, what do you want to do? You know, hopefully that happens, but quite often people have their own things that they got going on. So once you let people know, then if the opportunity comes up, and again, you're you're consistent, you have the aptitude to learn, then you'll get an opportunity at some point. And so that's another thing I definitely would suggest. And then understand what it is that you want to do, right? So some people just want to have a job and they're good, right? And that's fine. But if you are career oriented and you really want to mature as far as your career is concerned, know what it is that you want at the end, and kind of like the acting stuff and everything, let that be your guiding star. So if you know what you want to be, let's say you want to be, I don't know, a security person, right? And you know those are the things that's the thing that you have to look out for. So the next time maybe you come across somebody who's like, hey, he's a cybersecurity this and that. Well, then, boom, now you can have that conversation or let them know, and that kind of guides you. Whereas if you didn't really know that that's where you want to be, and you come across some of these resources, maybe you don't have those conversations. So kind of, know where you're going.
I like it. It's good advice.
Yeah.
And then what was it like working with your wife with a recruiting company? That's one of the most difficult industries. It's really competitive. I know it can be really rewarding, but what inspired you to start the company, and what was it like growing it together? So
we've been entrepreneurial, and we've had multiple things that we've tried. And like most entrepreneurs, it's 90%. You try things that don't work and you move on to the next. So this is one of those things. But she was working full time. I was working full time. And between the two companies that she was working for and I was working for, the companies used recruiters. And so the idea was, well, I know what to look for and I've hired. Why don't we try to recruit for other companies? And so, we did that for a while. And the process was very interesting. I mean, you'd have to source a job. A company would have to be okay with you hiring for that position. So you'd have to put something out, job description, whatnot, and then go through resumes, and then whittle those down, and then have, maybe screenings, and then finally have interviews, and just go through the whole process. So it was interesting to not just be on the side where you're a manager looking for a role, but actually now you're part of the recruiting side of it and understanding what that all entails.
What was it like in terms of the research? Did you use a lot of LinkedIn back then, or Indeed, or Monster?
We wound up using Indeed. Yeah.
Yeah, because I know they I don't know, they're not as popular as they used to be. It seems like a lot of my friends these days have been using LinkedIn heavily. Then, I was going to say, the OG was Monster way back in the day.
Exactly. Yeah.
Then what out of curiosity, what was it like screening all those folks? Do you have like a favorite interview question?
Really, it helped me understand what not to do if you're looking for a job, right? First and foremost, I mean, the thing that you have to go through is a resume, right?
Yep.
So these days, there's so many AI tools that'll help you write a resume, right? So you kind of know what you've done, you have your history, but let an AI tool format it, right? Make it visually appealing. That's the first step, right?
What's your favorite AI tool, actually?
I've used ChatGPT for resume once. I haven't really been looking for so long. I haven't had the need for it, but ChatGPT is great. You can try, Gemini. You can use, some of the Microsoft native stuff. So those are some options. But but make your resume look good. Make the stuff that's on there relevant. So if you have a long history, get rid of some of the stuff that doesn't matter, and then just be ready to talk about it. Be ready to talk about it.
Out of curiosity, I know this used to be a big controversial issue in terms of having a resume, and the debate is old as time. What's the optimal number of pages for a resume, in your opinion? Even if they have a long tenured career.
So it depends. So if you're new to IT, keep it short. Keep it page, 2 pages maximum. As you get at the higher levels, directors, VPs, and so on and so forth. At that point, it doesn't really matter as much because then they're looking for some more detail in how you have turned around a company, and that's not going to be a one-liner. Sure. So it just depends on where you're at in your career. But if I would to take off the C-level ones, I'd say no more than 2 pages.
I think that's a good rule of thumb.
Yeah.
Because, again, you get some of them where it's like, I've gotten some resumes submitted for my company. It's like 6 pages. I'm like, I'm not going to read this. I'll throw the AI. I'll have the AI give me like, hey, AI tool, give me the top 5 bullet points for this person's short story of a book.
Yeah.
It's like, after a couple pages, like, do you really need all of that detail?
Yeah.
Like, what are the odds someone's going to read all of it?
Yeah, and nobody's really going to care what you did in 1985, and most of that stuff is not relevant. So,
well, especially in IT. Oh my gosh, it's like, do you really need someone who knows how to work on Windows XP or or what was it, like Norton Antivirus way back then?
Novell Netware, like you don't need to list that.
Exactly. And then, what was your thoughts, or do you have like a favorite interview question, or do you like, what are your thoughts like curveballs in terms of asking people questions that kind of gauge how they react to certain scenarios or situations?
So I'm very big on sense of urgency, right? So in my area, which is primarily support, like, right? So everything, it deals with the customer, whether it's internal and external, making sure that the tools are being delivered the way they need to be. And so part of that is understanding your audience and understanding the situation, right? So I'll ask questions like, all right, so it's the end of the day, it's 5:00, and you have someone in marketing saying, hey, my computer is not booting up, can you help me? You have somebody in accounting saying, hey, we're supposed to get this this wire that's supposed to come in by 6:00. It's for, $500,000. Something's going on with my computer. Can you help me? And then you have the CEO saying, hey, I'm trying to print this invitation for my kid. I'd like to print it before I go home. It's not the end of the world, but can you help me? And so now you look at it, it's the CEO, very important. It's somebody in marketing, important in their own way. And you got somebody in accounting. How do you triage that? What do you put most of the emphasis on, right? And a lot of people will say, well, I'll tell marketing, can it wait? And they'll say yes. And then I'll work on the accounting because that's money. And I said, okay. I said, that's great. What else? Well, I mean, that's money. I was like, yeah, but what else? And a lot of them get it. I was like, you got to communicate. Yeah. If you talk to the CEO and you tell him what's going on, he's 9 out of 10 times he's going to say, "Oh, handle the money," because that's what pays everybody's salary.
That's what I was kind of thinking is all about. I mean, half of life is just managing expectations and make sure everyone's on the same page, in personal and professional. Yeah. My thought would be like, first email, 30 seconds, send to the CEO, be like, "Hey, Mr. Bob or Sally, whoever," be like, "Would love to help you. Currently working on this issue right now. I expect I'll be able to troubleshoot it. Would it be okay if I took care of that first?"
Right, exactly.
And be like, then obviously, because again, especially nowadays, and with AI, it takes 20 to 30 seconds to send an email out. Just gotta let everyone know the situation.
Yeah, exactly. And so with that scenario, it's not about somebody being, very technically savvy, right? Because in that situation, maybe they can't fix it. But they've set expectations, like you said, and they've triaged it, and now they can put their focus on that issue. And whether or not they're the ones that fix it, at least now the focus is on that issue, and everybody is aware. So I value that quite a bit. So that's not really a technical; that's more like a logical or common sense. So I definitely look for that. And then as far as any technical questions, I got to make sure that they know what they're expected to do, right? You don't want to hire somebody that's a web developer, supposed to be a web developer that's never developed web pages, right?
Oh yeah.
So you got to pepper them with those. And then finally, the final thing that we kind of look at, or I've looked at, is I look at a person and go, how are they going to fit on the team? Like, is this somebody that everyone's going to be okay with on a day-to-day basis? That's outside of technical prowess. Are they going to get along? And maybe, they're a great person, but maybe the team that you have internally, you just know that, they're going to bump heads, right? Yeah. And so you have to kind of look at what the makeup of the team is going to be if this person comes on, and if it's going to work, great. If it's not, you kind of have to,
make that call.
And sometimes you see it as someone that you're hiring, as someone that is hiring, or you have your staff also get a chance to be in the room with them, ask questions, and then just get all the feedback and make the right decision.
It is astonishing how many people I've turned away over the years who are the most technically proficient people on the planet. They know everything, but their personal skills, interpersonal skills are just so poor. You would never introduce them to your team, let alone a customer, an end user. Yeah. And it's so sad that so many people are being held back in that regard. Because again, you can fix that, I think, with self-improvement, but that's one of those biggest variables that people forget to think about. It's like, oh yeah, the resume looks great. They're technically proficient. They have exceptional experience. But how are they going to fit the company? What about the morals of the company?
Yeah.
And how are they going to fit in with the team?
Yeah.
Are they going to get along, or are they going to cause friction and trouble? Which, again, that just brings down everyone's productivity, their happiness, and at the end of the day, that hurts the company.
Yeah, soft skills are important. Like for me, my path has never been extremely technical. It's been that I understand the technology, I understand the business, and I know how to bridge the gap between the two. And I know how to talk to people that are very technical and be able to decipher that to C-level suite people, right? And so, these are all soft skills. And so my career has been about being able to communicate, being a good person, trying to be pleasant when I can. It's not about selling my soul or anything like that, but it's about being pleasant. And again, letting people know where I want my career to go. And those things have propelled me quite a bit in my career.
Out of curiosity, what's your philosophy about recruiting and looking at people's like social media sites? I know like when I used to work at corporate America, like at Hewlett Packard, they wouldn't allow managers to do that. I know some companies, they do it just to kind of see their interests. I know that's kind of controversial as silly as it may sound. That's actually a yes or no at a lot of big companies. What are your thoughts on using that as a mechanism to further evaluate the prospective new hire?
I think it's good, actually. I've seen somebody's social media that I, had a company hire, and had I seen that prior, I might have taken a beat as far as, submitting that person. And it wound up that his social media was kind of reflective on how he was as an employee. And so I think it's important. I think it makes sense because, if you're I'm just making something up. If you're a person who's all your shots are, half naked and drunk and whatnot, I mean, that's kind of who you are. And especially if you're trying to get a job and potentially somebody might look at social media, what does that say?
I would also argue maybe it's not to be pejorative, but maybe lower intellect if they don't realize their profile is set to public and anyone can see that. And it's mostly them being inebriated or being. Another thing I look for is like, are most of the comments that they make positive or negative? Are they constructive criticism or are they negative for the sake of being negative?
Right.
So that's one of those things where it's like, I think that's kind of indicative of a personality. Like if everything they post about, like it's always, if they have Yelp, not to go down the rabbit hole, but you look at their Google reviews, stuff like that, it's always negative. I tend to think they're probably a negative person overall, and it might be one of those things where it's not possible to really make them happy. And I wouldn't want someone like that in my life or on my team. Even I think you can coach people to a certain extent to kind of lead them down a path to positivity, and they could increase their interpersonal skills. But it's also a burdensome thing depending on your relationship with that person. Like might make sense or personal if you know them for decades, but as a prospective new hire, is that something you want to take on?
Right.
Because that is a big project in and of itself.
Yeah. You want to look at everything in totality, obviously, right? But I know that in my experience, the times that, hey, I missed something, or I kind of said, let's let that slide. It has come back in a sense to bite me, right? So like, for example, that particular employee, when I saw his social media afterwards, I won't get into the details, but I checked with him. I was like, hey, you probably want to, lock that down or delete some of that or whatever, because it's a public profile. The company sees it. It kind of looks bad. It's like, oh, I'm so sorry. I'll take care of that right away. And, that was me kind of throwing him a bone. But at the end of the day, his behavior, again, was reflected what I had seen on his social media.
That's a shame.
And they wound up letting him go.
That's a shame because, I don't know, maybe I'm just foolishly optimistic, but I always hope people turn things around for the better. And because, again, I've seen it, and I think everyone has that potential. So it's always rough when you get that gut feeling and you see it, and you're like, you give them a life raft, like you're saying, hey, I see something. This is the path you need, and they
don't take it.
Yeah, they don't take it, and unfortunately.
And another thing with that, so I don't want people to assume that everyone has to have a particular way of doing things that's accepted or anything like that. I really am talking about the culture of the company and how they would fit with the culture of the company and the team. And for example, I got hired on at this one job where my boss was the day that I got hired on. She said, hey, I want you to clean up the service desk or the help desk. There are these two problem people. I want you to get rid of them as soon as you can. And I was like, okay, all right, well, listen, I understand what you want, and I understand your concern. It's kind of my first day here. Can I get a little bit of time just so I get to know and understand what's going on so I don't miss anything? Mm-hmm. I don't want to, do something knee jerk without me having, any information that might be helpful to you or me. And she said, okay, I'll give you some time. And so after, being there for a bit and understanding the young lady's idiosyncrasies and ways of working, I understood that, I can make this work, because I didn't need, my boss wanted everybody to be like one of the all-star people, right?
Yeah.
And I get that. But at the same time, and I've said this so many times, you don't always need a team of Michael Jordans, right? Yeah. You don't need a team of people that are always shooting the ball. Sometimes you need that person who's very comfortable doing a very specific set of tasks, and that's what they want to do, and they're extremely reliable, and they're there every day, and that's what she was. I put her in, I created an access management group that all she did was provision accounts and deprovision accounts. Mm-hmm. And it took attention to detail. It took being able to do the same thing day in and day out without fail. And it was one person in that role. So you couldn't be, calling off all the time and having excuses and everything. Oh, yeah. And she was a rock star. And nobody else wanted to do it. So awesome. Sometimes it takes, looking at things and knowing, okay, this is what I have now. What do I need to kind of fill this out? Mm-hmm. Here's a person who's extremely outgoing. Here's a person that's not, but they work well together. So it's just, it's kind of looking at things overall.
That overall communication skills are just something that everyone could be a little bit better on. Yeah. And it's amazing just because, it's funny. I mean, I'm a Texan and proud of it. I'm still a little bit of an Iowan, and I grew up in the Midwest. And I used to phrase my emails in such a way where, it's more like very courteous, and, I would always use like Mr. Smith, something like that. Uh-huh. And after a couple of years of living in Texas, they go, Topping, you're kind of being a dick. I'm like, what do you mean? Like, everyone thinks you're being passive aggressive in these emails. They're like, oh no, I genuinely meant it, but it's the huge culture shock learning of how to just reformatting the emails a little bit. Mm-hmm. All of a sudden, everyone liked me a little bit more because it reframed the whole situation, and I was made aware of it. Thanks again, the friend gave me some nice constructive criticism and helped me out a lot. Yeah. But just the little phrases in emails, just rewording a couple of things, and it can change the entire company's perception about you. It's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, and I call that, knowing your audience. You have to always know your audience, know who you're talking to, know what they're trying to accomplish, and that'll help you in spades.
Oh, absolutely. That was the biggest culture shock coming to Texas. Like, oh yeah, everyone's on a first name basis. Like, even my manager, like, oh yeah, just call him Cal. I'm like, well, no, it felt so weird the first couple of times. I was like, all right, I'll get into it. And then where do you go after the help desk manager position?
So after that, I got promoted, still same company. So I was a help desk manager. Then I became a senior lead, technical lead. And then I had a VP of IT, and I had somebody that I was supposed to be reporting to. They never were really doing their job. On day one, I would ask them questions, and they wouldn't respond. And people would constantly come by my office because we were next to each other, and poke their head in my office and say, "Hey, where's such and such?" I'm like, "Probably smoking. I'm not sure." And he was always out of the office smoking or whatnot. And so I quickly determined that, okay, he's my boss on paper, but I got to kind of do this on my own. Mm-hmm. And so at that point, I kind of became the go-to person technically. And so one day we had a ransomware attack, and luckily I was at the office. I noticed some behavior happening on the network with files that all of a sudden they're renamed and ending in tilde and whatnot. So I physically ran through the office and asked everyone, like, has anybody got an email or anything, clicked on any link or anything? And one of the young ladies raised her hand. She was like, hey, I got this email, and there was a shortcut or link for this, but it's not really working. Oh no. And I was like, I yanked her computer out of the wall. As soon as I did it, the encryption stopped. And I was like, okay, that's perfect. And so I went to trying to restore files and stuff like that. And all of a sudden it started happening again. And I was like, oh my God, what is going on? And I ran through the office again and she was on her computer working. I was like, did you plug that back in? She said, yeah, I got to finish this email. I was like, no. So I just took the computer. And so all of this, I kind of saved the day. I made sure that our offsite backup did not get encrypted, and
thank God.
And so these were all things that he was supposed to be doing. Mm-hmm. So at that point, it was very obvious that he was in a role that I should have been in. So they didn't put me in his role, but they created a role that was equal to his, and so that was sort of at that point I was a senior manager.
How'd the backups go?
So we had local tape backups, and then we had incremental backups offsite.
And how'd their store go?
Oh, their store, it was fine because I cut the connection to our external backup or offsite backup.
Excellent.
And then once we did that, we were able to just fold it over back to our data on site. And so we were good.
Excellent.
Yeah.
That's half the battle. So those awkward questions when it's like, oh yeah, we're talking about backup. We haven't. Great. They're scheduled. Awesome. Are they tested?
Are they tested?
That's half the battle. It's like, we haven't done that in a while. Like, let's do that just in case. Because so many companies have backups, or they think they do. Mm-hmm. And like, oh yeah, it's scheduled, but are they tested? It's like, that's the real test of those backup solutions.
Exactly.
That's what it matters most.
So yeah, that was help desk, senior tech manager, senior manager. And then it was around that point that it was one of the more difficult decisions in my career, where I'd constantly get offers from other companies, and I would entertain them, and I would let the company know, hey, I think I might take this. And this happened 3 times, and each time they were like, no, don't take it. We love you, so on and so forth. And so my position would change, more money,
nice,
and I would stick around. And then finally, I got an offer that was really good, and I wasn't getting along with my VP. It was a situation where I could tell he thought that maybe I wanted his job, and maybe eventually years later I would like that job, but not necessarily taking his at that company as a VP. And so I decided that I was going to take this other job. And then the owners were actually overseas. They're Jewish, so they were in Israel at the time. And I put my notice in on a Monday, and then nobody let them know until they had left that Thursday for Israel.
And they're off Fridays.
Yeah. And so they were off Friday. Saturday, they called me and they said, hey, so did you take this other job? And I said, yeah, it's a good career move. And they said, listen, don't go there the first day. Come to the office and let's talk. I was like, all right. So I postponed my first day at this new gig and went in, and they took me off site, and they said, hey, you're the guy, we want you, and that you're the person that we want in the future, and that future is soon. And so I was like, but I have a VP, and they said, you're going to be the guy. And so I told them what my vision was for the company, and they agreed, and then I went to our HR person, and she said, okay, I heard that, they are offering you XYZ. I was like, yeah. It's like, oh, that's great. So what else do you want? I was like, what do you mean? It's like, so, what do you want as far as your role? And I said, okay, well, I don't really want to report to him anymore. Done. What else?
Nice.
I was like, all right. I kind of want to be in charge. I want to be in charge of the network and these particular servers. Okay, done. What else? I was like, I think that's it. And she's like, okay. And then she said, okay, so as far as what this other company is offering you, it's a small world in our industry. If I were to check, is that what they're offering you? And I was like, yeah. And so then I left, and something was bothering me. And I was like, why did she ask me if I was telling the truth about what I was being offered? And it didn't sit right with me. And then I told my wife, and she said, you need to leave. I was like, but I just got all this, this offer. And then she said, here's the thing. Each time that you've gotten a promotion at this job, it's been followed by, or it followed you getting an offer somewhere else. I was like, She said, so why do they have to see somebody having this confidence in you for them to turn around and finally give you something? I was like, you have a point. And I was like, well, it's the devil you know sometimes is better than the devil you don't know. Going to a new job, you never know.
That's true.
And she said, Nelson, you've told people that you mentor that in IT, you don't stick around for 10 years. You come in 2 or 3 years, you knock it out of the ballpark, and then you move on because you tend to make more, whether it's a higher position or more pay when you go from company to company. That's why CEOs move from company to company. They come in, they turn the company around or whatever, 2, 3 years, and then they move on, and huge pay scale increase. And so I said, you know what, you're right. And I wound up turning down the offer, and then I moved on. And at that point, it was my first director position, and that was 2 jobs ago, and still carrying on.
That's awesome. So that job that you postponed on that Monday, did you end up going to that same role?
I went to that role. Yeah, I went ahead and went in the that Tuesday afterwards, and I was there for 5 years.
Oh, wow.
And the owner loved me. I turned the company around. Well,
which company is that?
This was another company that was in skilled nursing. It was called Premier BH.
Oh,
and
cool.
so I matured their IT footprint. They didn't really have anything. They had a son-in-law that was doing IT.
Oh, yeah.
And so I put everything in there, from the right infrastructure to the right cameras to the standardizing all their hardware, the right switches, just the entire infrastructure. So I got that in place, and that went on for 5 years. And then my wife and I had moved back to Texas at that point, and I was working for that company remotely here in Dallas when I got my current offer, and I wound up taking that, and then found out within a day that old company was closing down because the owner had passed away.
Oh, really?
And so it's just been these things that were kind of the right time at the right moment, and it's helped progress my career.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Then tell us a little bit about your current role.
My current role.
And what's the company do?
So the company's in the logistics space. So if you think about anything that's perishable that trucks carry through the continental U.S., we are the largest seller and servicer of what they're known as reefer units that stick on those trailers. So anything that has to stay a certain temperature so that things don't perish, whether it's drugs or food, has to have an AC unit. So we sell those, and we also sell and repair the tractor trailers. So we've got the largest footprint in North America. So we like to say that pretty much anything that goes through, anything that's in the grocery stores or anything that you buy goes through one of our branches at some point in time.
That's really cool.
Yeah. So it's very blue collar. Again, I came in and sort of kind of doing a turnaround job. The company is very profitable, so they got invested by a private equity firm about 1.5 years ago. So about a year ago, they looked for somebody that had worked in situations where you have a small IT team, you're managing multiple locations, which is where I came from. And so here, I came from managing 36 locations all through Northern and Southern California and Arizona. And here I'm managing right now 22 locations through Oklahoma, Texas, Arkansas, Louisiana. And we're poised to grow and acquire. So we might double in size within the next year or so. So
it's a lot of locations.
Yeah. So they brought me in to manage that, mergers and acquisitions, and build the team. And so that's what I've been doing.
That's a fun IT challenge.
Yeah. Yeah.
Especially the acquisitions. You never know what you're going to find in those cases.
Yeah. Yeah. But it's fun to me. I like the idea of the discovery, and then, taking whatever template that you have for all your other locations, if you've done it the right way, and then applying it. So
you just copy paste it at all new locations.
Yeah, creating a nice little economy of scale. If it's worked for 20 locations, then it's going to work for the 21st.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I wonder if in our lifetime will we see truly autonomous semi trucks? You have proof of concepts. Yeah, we've seen a little bit, but I wonder if there would be mass adoption.
We have to be okay with the wrecks. That's the thing. When something happens with, the autonomous cars or even these trucks, wrecks happen. They're going to happen, but we're not okay with it right now. The moment that something happens, we want to pump the brakes and push it on down for another couple of years.
Which is interesting because, again, humans make a lot of mistakes and they make a lot of accidents, but there's something culturally in the United States, especially where we don't like to accept the fact that it could be a computer that causes the issue.
See, what we have that they don't have is a nuance, right? So you can be in your car and have this view of the cars in front of you and a kid in a yard who's bouncing a ball, and intuitively you understand to watch that kid because might kick the ball and run after it. Computer doesn't see that. The computer will see, the AI will see once something is in front, okay, I need to apply the brakes, but it might be too late. Even though all of the things that it does it in such a way that it has less wrecks because it doesn't, it's not caught up on its cell phone, it's not texting, it's not falling asleep. So all those things equate to less accidents. But because it can't do that little nuance, even though those accidents are going to be a lot less, like you said, we just can't accept it just yet.
I think maybe in 20, 30 years, I think it almost might be inevitable just because, again, the cost benefit analysis, and eventually the tech will catch up with that is safer. Even with they'll somehow build in the nuance for the AI. It'll get there eventually, I think.
Well, we come from a culture we drive.
Oh yeah.
You're a car guy. From what I gather, I grew up a car guy.
Three pedals for life.
Yeah. And so we're drivers. But what's going to happen is, everybody's getting older. So people are going to drive less. And then the millennials, a lot of them don't care about cars. A lot of them don't have cars. They just Uber everywhere. So that's the older generation and the younger generation are going to wind up pushing to have these autonomous vehicles.
It's such a foreign, unusual, bizarre concept to me. When I was hanging out with my nephew last year, like he was turning 17, and I asked him, "Hey, that's awesome! You get to drive your dad's car." He's like, "I don't have a license." I'm like, "What? You do not have a driver's license?" "No." I'm like, "What? So you don't drive?" He's like, "No, I Uber everywhere." I'm like, I look at the parents. I'm like, "Really?" And like, "Oh yeah, he loves the Uber." And I'm like, I don't know, to me, the pinnacle of freedom was getting your driver's license when you turn 16 years old and driving somewhere.
Yep.
And usually breaking the speed limit. Sorry, Mom and Dad.
At 15, we had a permits if you could have a permit.
Exactly.
And the moment, we turned 16, it was, let's go to the DMV and let's get this license. Yeah.
Exactly. And then you have your dream car. It's freedom.
Yeah.
And now, like, oh yeah, I'll just Uber or Lyft anywhere, which, again, winding back the clock a couple decades, how funny is that? Don't trust strangers. Get into a stranger's car.
Well, it's also interesting because as we grew up, we didn't have a lot of things that we had to pay for, right? So we get a used car for our first car. We might have to pay for gas, but that was about it. So how could you justify having to pay to go everywhere? But the generations now, there's so many subscription services that people are paying for.
Oh yeah.
So
What's one more?
What's one more every once in a while, and I think that's where for them it makes sense because a lot of them, I don't even think they're interested in used cars. They just, if they're going to get a car, it might be new. So that's a car payment and insurance.
Oh yeah, that's expensive these days. And that's another issue with there used to be a larger volume of used cars in the United States, but the cash for clunkers got rid of a lot of them. So there's a much smaller supply. So even back in the day, you get a nice cheap Mazda Miata for $3,000 on the Craigslist. And shoot, you're hard pressed to find a cheap used car these days that's also reliable.
Yeah.
And then most of them don't even know how to change a tire, yet alone maintain the vehicle. If you own a vehicle, you got to worry about the proper maintaining. You got to change the oil, got to rotate the tires, maybe change the spark plugs every once in a while. Yeah. And to me, I find that fascinating. I cannot wait till someday I actually have a lift for my car to do that myself. But for them, they just don't care. They don't care. They don't want to.
No. And back then, if you could save up $3,000, you could get a used car.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Now, a used car, you're talking about.
I'd say about $8,000 is. What do you? Because I'll still look at the Craigslist every once in a while. I'll be like, what could I get out there? It's like, it's about it's about that much.
Yeah, but if you want something that you don't have to put a lot of work into it right away, it needs to be $10,000 and up.
Exactly.
For people that don't mind, popping the hood, $8,000, it'll be a good car, but you might have to do some maintenance. So
then the downside of tech, which obviously I love, we both work in tech, but the downside of, all the cool things we have in cars nowadays, that's more variables and more areas that points of failure too. So like those old cars, you can wrench on them pretty easy, like a 2001 Honda. There's not too many fancy things in there. I think my parents had a radio and a CD cassette player. It's like, you could fix that with thankfully like YouTube tutorials that teach you most things you need to. Nowadays, cars are basically they are computers on wheels. So a lot of it is software issues, and some things you're not allowed to do in terms of maintenance of your vehicle or fixing it.
Yeah, I was driving in my car, and all of a sudden the screen went out, and everything is on the screen. So first of all, I was afraid the car would just stop, but it didn't.
What car do you have again?
It's a Tesla.
Which one?
Model S.
Oh, nice. There you go.
And wound up having to pull to the gas station and pull out my phone and Google how to reset the screen.
Yeah.
And so I was able to figure that out and reset it. And after 30 minutes, everything started booting up, and I was finally able to see all the controls. And to your point, I was like, if that thing goes out, you're just screwed. Like, you can't do anything.
No. There's no.
Yeah.
So was it 30 minutes? Was that the reset cycle, or is that you researching the problem?
Oh no, it took me like a minute to research how to reset everything, and then once I reset it, it took about a minute for the screen to cycle through. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, I was gonna say that still freaked me out because everything in the Tesla is central to that little screen. Well, not little, that the screen right there. Mm-hmm. It's like, if that goes out, I don't know what you do.
Yeah, it's a little scary, but it's worth it. Yeah, it's a fun toy for techies. It's a fun toy.
Oh, and especially for acceleration, those things are insane. Like I've read the things about the Model Plaid, and like you see the videos on the YouTube, and they're fast as a rocket. It's astonishing.
Yeah, I've got the basic model, right? So I've got a single motor. It's not the Plaid, but even that car, it just blows your mind, and I feel kind of bad because I've had it for over a year, and it just never gets old. Pushing that accelerator and instant torque, it never gets old. I've had to change a few tires, but it's been worth it. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I still can't wait for him to come out with the Roadster eventually, or like the new updated version.
Yeah, supposedly they're gonna try to come out with something else.
Supposedly, he's been a little late.
It's been years.
Yeah. I mean, at least the last speed and feed he was saying was like sub 2 seconds, 0 to 60. Which with an EV you can make that happen. It's insane.
You can make it happen, but there are a lot of variables, right? How much tire to ground do you have? Because there are a lot of cars that have quite a bit of torque, but you gun it and all you get is wheel spin. So it'd be interesting to see.
Yeah, Hellcats. So out of curiosity, what's your dream car if you won the lottery tomorrow, vintage and new?
I like the Aston Martin right now. It's the Aston Martin DB9. I like that car, but I'm also I like the Rolls Royces. They got some models. They're 2 doors and they just
Spectre.
Spectres. They look great. So
probably one of the best customer service things on the planet. If you want to customize it, they'll do it for you. It'll be handmade. Yeah. You like the UK stuff, the fancy English. I like it.
Yeah. I mean, I like that one. I mean, unfortunately, some of the cars that I do like, but I would never get. Like the Range Rovers, like if you sit in a new Range Rover, it smells great. It's amazing. Took my wife to test drive one. She wants one. I was like, never happening. No. Now you have to lease.
You have to lease it. That's the one time where it makes sense.
But even though you lease it, you've got people that complain because yes, it's covered, but you lease a car and it's in the garage all the time.
Oh yeah.
So what's the point?
That's the issue. They've had that issue for so many years. I joke my one friend has one. I say, Juan, you're the only person who should have it because he could wrench on it himself. He knows how to do. But an Aston Martin, I love those things just because nowadays, it feels like one other car you can get that's a V12 with a stick shift. That's insanely rare. And was it the DB8s? They depreciate so much. Granted, it's a V8, but still V8 with a stick. Those things are going for like $40,000, which for that car, that gets... The maintenance scares me. Yeah. But talk about a handcrafted work of art. That's just beautiful. I love those things.
Yeah, there are a few cars where they depreciate quite a bit, 60, 70% over 5 years, but are still really good cars. And the Astons fit that label. Yeah, I mean, don't get a Maseratis. They'll suck. Those are horrible. I told a buddy in LA, he got the baby Maserati, and before he got, I was like, don't get it. He's like, I gotta get it. I was like, why? Trust me, don't get it.
Get it used.
He got it, and within a week it was in the shop, and then it was in the shop, over and over for a month, and he finally returned it using the lemon law. I was like, I told you.
Those things are so bad, and not in a good way. Those things, I think the poster boy of people used to joke about Mercedes. Oh, that's got nothing on a Maserati. I mean, those things depreciate like a rock and are actually less reliable than a rock. It's like, I actually don't even have a desire for a Maserati. No. If you want that caliber of performance, and you want that type of prestige, I mean, at that point, I guess you just go Ferrari if you want that route, or Lamborghini.
You've got other options.
Exactly. What's a compelling reason to go with that brand? Yeah. You used to have racing heritage, but not so much these days. Like,
Fell off completely. I mean, you're buying a Chrysler with a Ferrari engine.
precisely.
Yeah.
And rumor is, again, it could change by the time this video is rendered and uploaded, but Stellantis, well, CEO's gone, but rumor is they might actually kill that brand or sell it because it's really their one luxury brand, and they're obviously not managing it properly. I mean, it'd be kind of ironic if their old competitor Ferrari were to buy them. I'm not sure why they would, except maybe have a cheaper alternative. But yeah, it's one of those things where, yeah, what was so beautiful. Kind of like Lotus. Now, thank God they're not going all in on EV like they said they would.
Right.
But to me, a great Lotus is a stick shift, small, lightweight vehicle for the track, which they made some great ones. Like, I mean, was it the Evora?
The Evora,
Those things are beautiful and cool.
Yeah, and simple. They're just exactly what you need. There's no overkill.
And a bulletproof Toyota engine, which 4 cylinders isn't a lot, but in a small package, I love my Honda. It's got a little 4-banger in there, and that use case is just perfect for that car.
Yeah.
And again, there's something unique about the UK engineering and design. It's just something beautiful.
Yeah.
And I do credit James Bond to a lot of the fans. The Aston Martin has been there for decades.
Yeah.
But yeah, I forget the Aston Martin. I forget the particular nomenclature, but there's the $1.2 million one, and you can actually see the shift links of the stick shift. It was so beautiful.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's such a rare experience these days.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to say, Nelson, thanks so much for coming on the show, man. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. It's been great talking to you.
Absolutely. We'll have to have you on the show again soon.
Absolutely.
All right. Thanks again, everyone, for taking the time to tune in. Don't forget to take the time to like, subscribe, and comment. Also, don't forget to take the time to tell your family, tell your friends, tell your coworkers, heck, tell your enemies, tell anyone and everyone. Just stay safe. Y'all have a great day. Topping Talks.